You mentioned January 6th, and we do have this story which just came out a couple hours ago. On Twitter, everyone is, people are saying that Alex Jones has flipped.
Huh.
According to the New York Times, Alex Jones reached out to the Justice Department about a January 6th interview. They say that through his lawyer, Mr. Jones said he has given the government a formal letter conveying his desire to speak to federal prosecutors. The lawyer, Norm Pattis, maintained that Mr. Jones had not engaged in any criminal wrongdoing that day when chanting slogans about 1776. As a condition of being interviewed by federal investigators, Mr. Jones, who is known for his rants about the deep state and is supposed to control and its supposed control over national affairs, has requested immunity from prosecution.
Huh.
The first thing I would say is I don't trust the New York Times on stories like this. But the other thing I would say too is everyone's saying, a lot of people on the left, they're like, he's flipped. I'm like, Alex Jones is on video yelling at them not to go near the Capitol, that it was a trap not to go in.
He's not going to get immunity from prosecution. First of all, there are no crimes that are being pursued here other than perhaps against some of the January 6th defendants who actually committed violent acts in violation of the law. The Alex Joneses of the world, to the degree they're facing any liability, it's because of corrupt prosecutions or activity by the FBI, DOJ, and the Democrats in Congress pushing them. And, my understanding of the federal system is that you don't get immunity. What they do is you plead guilty to a crime, accept a punishment that might be mitigated as a result of your cooperation. They don't give out typically immunity for crimes. They make you plead guilty. So, my guess is Alex Jones wants to roll the FBI and tell them the truth about what he did. And, I believe he didn't do anything wrong.
The people who believe the most psychotic conspiracies about January 6th believe insane conspiracies about what this is right now. He's flipping. Oh, man, he's there. He's going to rat on Trump. The funny thing
that's the crazy talk, that there's something to flip over.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So we had this really fun moment in January where I said that the people who were, waved in to the Capitol or who walked up and the cops opened the doors and said, let him come in and said, I respect your right to protest, and took selfies with them. These people, it's how are you going to get them on trespassing? How are you going to get them on, trespassing in the Capitol if they're invited in? You won't be able to do it. And the Young Turks did this segment where they were like, Tim Pool is so dumb, he's so dumb. And then what did we see? There's actually a guy got the charges dismissed because he was like, they let me in. The judge was like, you're right, they did. Have a nice day, good sir. So I imagine there's a lot of people who, obviously the ones that were fighting. There was one guy who got his charges dismissed relating to like mischief and vandalism or something. But he got trespassed because the judge was like, yo, you climbed over something to get in there. You knew you were trespassing. So we're going to see the people who are violent get charged. We're going to see the people who are let in. Probably a lot of these people are going to start getting, not guilty pleas or not guilty verdicts. But the people on the left who are seeing this story right now because they're tweeting about it, this is the exact same thing as the people who thought Trump was going to show up on March 3rd or whatever and walk into the White House and that Joe Biden had an ankle bracelet or whatever.
And arrest everyone. Yeah.
Right.
And it ain't going to happen. And, the real scandal is, we've sued for all the records, all the videos of the Capitol. We sued the Congress for it. We're in court. Nancy Pelosi's Congress is telling us that they have sovereign immunity, meaning they are immune from lawsuit. And none of the they're not public records. And even if they were, the public interest doesn't require their release. So it's the worst day in American history, but there's no public interest in releasing the records. So, in my experience, when you don't want to release 1 second of video, even voluntarily, what are you hiding? And I'm sorry, guys, but, this whole Michigan collapse, the Whitmer kidnapping collapse, means we should take a look at if the FBI would break the rules there. Did they break the rules in some of the January 6th activities? And I suspect we're going to find out that's the case.
Absolutely. I mean, look, anyone who knows the name Ray Epps can tell you that there was almost certainly foul play here. And we should just say to them what they've been saying to us over the fact that they've been collecting people's data in bulk. If they have nothing to hide, then they should have nothing to fear. Release the tape. Show us what happened.
Ray Epps is interesting. He was a dude at the rally, whatever you want to call it, event, January 16th, and he was like yelling for people to go to the Capitol, I believe.
And they
on
started
video.
calling him a Fed. Everyone started
like,
yelling at him, calling him a Fed, and shunned him.
And then all of a sudden he disappears and he's not prosecuted. Is this right?
He turns up in a bunch of videos encouraging people and inciting them to riot.
And not prosecuted. With the amount of spy tech we have, how is that guy not being prosecuted right now?
What about the guy who planted the bombs? They didn't find that person either.
Never
right?
found that. That story just disappeared.
Yeah.
Just completely disappeared.
And supposedly Harris is in the neighborhood.
Yes,
and
Harris
Secret
was
Service
right
didn't
there.
find it. What the heck's
Yes,
going on?
they said Kamala Harris was right there that morning, but then they just stopped looking for the guy who planted them. Apparently,
I mean, God help us. I hate to get back to the Secret Service. They get attacked. The agents were attacked for complaining about being attacked by dogs. We found out the Secret Service top people or people in the position to protect the president were being targeted with a scam, some type of fraud by these two shysters in D.C. They were offering them gifts, and the Secret Service didn't even figure out it was going on. I think it was the Postal Inspection Service that figured it out. So the Secret Service is dysfunctional, and as someone who doesn't want to see anyone in a position of power harmed in the worst possible way, I worry about our security in the. Look, January 6th highlights that the government can't protect us. They blew the security on January 6th at the Capitol. The Secret Service is just this side of dysfunctional, and these are major issues. I mean, why is it we think the Secret Service is any better than any other government agency?
Yeah, Olivia Rondeau went on Kennedy Nation and said something really profound, and I hope I get this right, Olivia. It's that the government is there to serve us, not to take care of us. Remember that. You're here to serve us. We put you there on purpose so that you can work for us and get this done right because we're all sovereign.
You're right, but at this point in our country, in the past 100 years, it's just like, dude, that's just not the case anymore.
But that's the American spirit. Without it, that's the nature. That the country is just a piece of land where people are getting along next door to each other. If we don't have that belief in common, then things can go pretty nuts.
We are seeing in cities, Democrat-controlled cities, non-citizens being granted the right to vote. The moment that happens, you don't have a country. Like it's happening. The presidential election, the Electoral College, is influenced by non-citizens. I think there was 1 or 2 votes in favor of Democrats because of the amount of illegal immigrants in California or something like that. The congressional seats are not apportioned based on citizen count; they're based on population count. So if you have 1 million non-citizens in one area, they're going to get an extra congressional seat and an extra electoral vote. These things are ripping. We're a ship. We're a big cruise ship. Those things are holes in the ship, and we are taking on one.
I'm a realist. Or do you think that we're just headed towards globalization and we got to figure out how to roll with it?
Oh, well, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So the issue is, to a certain degree, globalization is not a bad thing. The bad thing is the authoritarian takeover and the destruction of our sovereignty. You can have international agreements. We can do away with war. We can have this beautiful planet, but in this area, we have our own laws. We make our rules. We live according to our values and things like that. The problem is the World Economic Forum doesn't like our values. The Davos group doesn't like our values. The values they want for the world are more like China's. Yeah, I don't want to live that way. So that's the real problem. We had Elad Eliyahu on, and he said he likes a unipolar world. He doesn't want China to gain influence. He wants the U.S. to dominate everything because our values are better. And I'm like, he's being honest about it. And we need to recognize that in the world of the globalization, as it's colloquially understood, is Chinese-style social credit systems. We can have a kind of international relations that can, end war and have international courts, where we retain our sovereignty and our values persist.
Do you think we're really ever going to end war?
So I think what likely would happen is we may have already done it in the traditional sense of how we've known it, or be getting really close to it. Obviously, Ukraine and Russia right now, there's hot war. But will we break past that point where it is just not economically feasible or worth going to war? Instead, you'll see shady dealings, soft power, manipulation, or fifth generational warfare. So conflict will always exist in some form. But when we're talking about modern warfare and we get to the point where we're like kinetic warfare is fading away and now it's all manipulation games, it'll be psychological manipulation.
Well, this is Ukraine is kind of the highlights that war is a feature of the human condition. And, we spent trillions of dollars on our national security apparatus, the diplomacy, USAID, obviously our defense and intelligence establishments to prevent war in Europe. And it happened in a heartbeat. And
I think you could argue it's because of what we've spent.
Ukraine isn't Luxembourg. It has 45 million people. So this is not an insignificant military action by the Russians. And we paid these guys to stop crap like that from happening. And they couldn't figure out how to stop a gangster from going down the block and breaking someone's window. And I'm exaggerating, obviously, for effect there. But Putin was stoppable. And my view is this is where the corruption comes home to roost. He sees Biden, his cognitive challenges. He knows Biden's on the take because he's on the take in part from Russia, based on the information that's out there. So he sees a corrupted and firm leadership in our country, and why not do what he did? I'm not saying it was the reason he did it, but some of the stoppers that would have been in place as a result of a competent, strong America that wasn't corrupted weren't present. And to me, that's the result is death and destruction in Ukraine.
Yeah, man, that's why integrity is so important as an individual and as a nation, all of it. Because if you are no longer, your word is no longer good, no one's going to take you seriously.
We had documents. I love these documents we found because I go back to them all the time. And there were these documents just before Trump came in. Biden went and visited Ukraine, and the two top State Department officials in Ukraine are talking about his visit, the anti-corruption visit. And these were the two officials who testified against Trump. And they were talking 3 days before Trump came in that Biden's there and the Russian press is making fun of Biden's anti-corruption issues because his son is on Burisma. And they said that the Russians were trolling Biden, and the State Department guy goes, Burisma is the gift that keeps on giving. So, we've got the State Department telling themselves they're making fun of our country. Our foreign policy objective, let's say neutrally, it was to stop corruption in Ukraine, was being hampered by the vice president's family corruption. And we're supposed to forget that when Ukraine is invaded 4 years later.
I think when Obama said never overlook Joe's ability to screw something up. And he said something along those lines. He wasn't joking.
Yeah, he didn't say screw. Yeah. He used the F word.
Joe Biden screws up words. I mean, it's
apparently familial board corporate relations in Ukraine too. Hunter should have never been on that board, man. That's nuts.
Yeah, the challenge we face internally is tribalism. There are people who have built careers off pandering and they won't give it up. It's true on the right, it's true on the left. But I think what you have right now going on for the right is that, like I mentioned, the post-liberal types, people who were Democrat voters before, who are more interested in principle and integrity, are sitting here being like, look, I can watch Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro will be like, Joe Biden was engaged in corrupt behavior in Ukraine. And I'm like,
okay, gang.
And right. Okay, gang, he's engaged.
Okay, Joe Biden did bad things in Ukraine. Right? In fact, it's really quite obvious based on the tape we've seen.
Thank you, Seamus.
You're welcome.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, he's completely right. And then he'll come out with, some political position on policy as a response. And I'll be like, well, I disagree on your response position. But if we agree on the facts, that's what's happening. Any sane, reasonable person knows Joe Biden is crooked and doing crooked things. I mean, flying his son on Air Force 2 to China for a private equity deal. Why are you using our resources for that? But you'll get these people on the left who are just like, didn't happen. Yeah. Didn't happen. That's why they won't come on this show. I invite them on the show, they'll make an excuse. Because they know we'll sit down and I'll pull up all of the stories and all of the videos and they'll have to sit there and listen to it. And then they're going to have no choice when their fans are watching and like, I didn't know that. It's like, well, because they didn't tell you.
I never understood. Well, I guess I do understand. But politicians of both parties always misunderestimate. Is that the right word?
Misunderestimate. That's right. That's a man. I almost forgot about that.
I'm doubling down on underestimating it. The corruption is a driving force for so much of the electoral public. You remember when Nancy Pelosi came and took over Congress in 2010? You know what her big piece was? Her big slogan? We need to drain the swamp.
Huh. Yeah.
So, and what happens is these politicians run on battling corruption in Washington, D.C., of both parties, and then they get here, and it doesn't get done. And in the case of Trump, he actually did want to do something, and none of his appointees thought it was important. Republicans don't care about battling corruption. I know there are exceptions, and the exceptions prove the rule. Democrats have incorporated corruption, unfortunately, into their governance style. They turned their offices, in the case of the vice president, into a racketeering operation. So this is this to me. There's opportunities on both sides of the political aisle to run on a reform anti-corruption agenda with teeth.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.